Hey, this is Joyce, and thank you for popping in. Today, I'm going to take you back north to the city of Jacksonville, which is terribly, terribly full of abandoned cemeteries. I started with abandoned Black and slave cemeteries, and I'm sorry to say that I have found more. In more than one case, I found just today examples of people who have streets named after them, and yet they're in these miserable cemeteries. Today we're visiting Captain Mooney, Pickett Lynn Turner, Sammy's Arlington Community Cemetery, and the Phillips Craig Swamp Cemetery. Let's start with Camp Captain Mooney. Unfortunately, this one is locked and inaccessible. It's positioned between warehouses with locked gates. If there's a way in other than this, I don't know where it is. So the video footage you see is all I was able to gather, but I did get some photos from Google of the actual stones. There are 114 identified internments here, this industrial area in North Jacksonville. It was a rural area before the Civil War, and according to things I've read, looking it up, this was originally the Ellis Dairy property, and this was the Ellis Dairy Family Cemetery. There are Ellis family buried there before and after the Civil War. Now, during the Civil War, there were several tent and picket camps that were set up all around the city's periphery. Oh, and there you see, they've recently had a cleanup. There were more of those black bags in the back of the cemetery. Anyway, so there were these picket camps all over the city periphery, and there was one here on the Ellis property. So a battle occurred known as the Skirmish at Cedar Creek on March 1st, 1864. It is reputed to have occurred right here, where 7 Confederate and 2 Union soldiers were killed, and as the story goes, they literally were buried where they fell, including Captain Mooney. On June 26, 1927, the 4 Silcox daughters, who were part of the Ellis family, there you see Emma and Cloris Graves, they were drowned in a terrible boating accident. Story goes, the 4 sisters were out in the rowboat and they started rocking the boat and things did not go well. The 2 older girls, 18 and 14, tried to save the 2 younger girls, 12 and 10, and all 4 girls unfortunately died as a result. This happened in the Jacksonville Heights area, which was a new neighborhood at the time. I don't know if that still is a neighborhood or not, on the body of water known as Clearwater Lake. So here you see some of the photos of the soldiers that passed there that I popped from Google. Next, we'll be going to the Pickett Lynn Turner Cemetery. Here we are at the end of another dead-end road on the wrong side of the tracks at the Pickett Turner Cemetery. If you've driven through Jacksonville, you've seen the exit for Lem Turner Drive. There are 17 members of the Pickett family here, along with Lem or Lemuel Turner and his family. The Turners and the Picketts purchased 100 acres in the Trout River area of Jacksonville before the Civil War. Lem Turner owned land on both sides of the Trout River. There was a bridge crossing the Trout River. The Union Army burned it during their occupation in 1864. Lem Turner started a ferry. For many years, Lem Turner Road was known as Turner Ferry Road. John and Amanda Pickett had 13 children and dozens of grandchildren by the 1880s. Pickettville, as the area was called, was an unincorporated town for some time. Sad that this is what remains of people who had so much to do with the founding of the city. Saddest of all, far worse than I would have anticipated, Arlington Community Cemetery. The end of yet another dead-end road, 1205 Shackleton Road. 68 noted burials. A fair amount of trash. As you can see, a lot of overgrowth. I literally was walking through thigh-high stickers and weeds. These angels. These angels. And the family plot behind them. Very little information about this cemetery. On the wrong side of the tracks. In the Arlington area. Some of which, during post-Civil War days, was Gullah Geechee settlement, Freedmen settlement. A real shame. A touristy place in Jacksonville is the Kingsley Plantation, up near the Georgia-Florida border on the St. Mary's River. Zephaniah Kingsley died in 1843, a white man who married one of his slaves, a black woman. He allowed his slaves to earn money during their off hours. John Thomas was one of Kingsley's men. He managed the strawberry mill plantation. A hydraulic mill. He owned slaves. He was anti-secession. This area, Arlington, was a plantation. It was the strawberry plantation before the end of the war. His sawmill was the first steam-powered sawmill in the area. The Empire Point, Hazard's Bluff area. It, like much of Jacksonville and much of the South, was destroyed by soldiers before the end of the war. Anna, the wife to Zephaniah Kingsley, who was one of his slaves, bore 2 daughters with Zephaniah, Mary and Martha. Anna, Mary, and Martha are all buried here. Anna's grave remains unmarked. Mary married John Thomas. Martha married Orrin Baxter. The Baxter family monument is the oldest in this small cemetery that literally sits in the middle of a community. 1841. It's for Julia Baxter, the 6-year-old daughter of Mary and Orrin. Thomas freed some of his slaves before the end of the war and sold some in New Orleans in 1860. He was an advocate for the Union because he had a mixed family. He was threatened by violence from the Confederate sympathizers and moved north in 1862. This is part of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, which spans from St. Johns County, this county here in St. Augustine, all the way up into Wilmington, North Carolina. The cemetery literally sits in the middle of a neighborhood. Phillips Craig Swamp. Dating back to the 1840s, the Phillips Craig Swamp Cemetery was a communal burial ground for the old Phillips settlement, originally located along both sides of Old Kings Road, also known as St. Augustine Road. Later erased by 20th century subdivisions, this rural 19th century community was named after Albert Gallatin Phillips and his wife, Martha Ann Hendricks, daughter of pioneer settler Isaac Hendricks. They donated this property for a Methodist church, school, and cemetery. Many of South Jacksonville's early pioneer families are buried in this cemetery, along with graves of both Union and Confederate veterans. Since 1971, the Phillips Camp Swamp Cemetery has been owned and maintained by the Southern Genealogists Exchange Society, which has documented 135 marked graves. This is part of a land grant to William Hendricks in 1797 and confirmed to his son Isaac Hendricks, who then inherited. Isaac's daughter, Martha Ann, married the sheriff of Duval County. He held that position from 1833 to 1838. This was Albert Gallatin Phillips. Sometime prior to 1844, they gave this land for a Methodist church, school, and cemetery. It was thought to be the first Methodist church on the south bank of the St. Johns River in Jacksonville. Church services all were but destroyed during the Civil War, and the building soon demolished. It began as a community cemetery. Many of the original markers were of cedar